Hej och välkomna ska det vara till Cashflowpodden, och det är faktiskt avsnitt 21, och det har jag koll på nu, Christian.
Härligt.
Ja, och det är den 21:a som de säger. Gör vi 21 avsnitt, då är det lugnt liksom.
Då är det here to stay liksom.
Ja, då är det here to stay. Och vi snackade om det sist också, och det är så jävla viktigt att fortsätta dela med oss av det här mervärdet som vi med mycket hybris och självinsikt levererar till alla våra lyssnare då.
Jag tog på bra här. Nu har vi över 100 000 lyssningar, eller hur?
Ja, nej, men det springer på riktigt bra. Och det är kul att se att det är sånt bra. Ja, det är så jävla roligt att vi får så mycket frågor också. Och tjo och tjim, jag gillar sånt.
Precis. Och hör av er om ni har frågor, tankar eller vill vara med i podden på Cashflowpodden på Instagram eller TikTok. Finns vi där nu också. Finns på X också, såg jag.
Ja, jag lägger ut det mesta.
Härligt,
men det är viktigt. Jag har lärt mig vi har lärt oss det av någon som heter ekonomigurun där. Det är viktigt att synas.
Ja, det gäller alltså det är otroligt hur olika det där är. För ibland går TikTok bananas och ibland går liksom X. Eller någon gång har jag haft 900 000 visningar på threads liksom. What? Så, och sprida sin exponering. För vad som kan hända är att du kan ju bli deplatform. Det är ju bara X som tillåter yttrandefrihet idag. Och det kommer ju bli intressant nu när vi pratar om krypto i dagens avsnitt. Vi kommer intervjua CoinShares VD Jean-Marie och kommer vara superspännande. Det var något av det mest inspirerande kryptosamtalet jag haft de senaste 3 åren. Så det får ni inte missa. Men där, på tal om krypto, så otroligt reglerat på något sätt fortfarande och begränsat i EU, tror jag, som pushar Meta att begränsa sån typ av content. Så nästan varje gång jag lägger ut något om Bitcoin, eller speciellt om det är altcoins eller andra en Bitcoin eller Ethereum till exempel, så får jag ofta en flaggning eller en varning på Instagram eller på threads liksom, att det här är ekonomisk scam eller fraud liksom, som du försöker bedriva. Alltså det finns ingen yttrandefrihet inom krypto, och det hindrar många. Tyvärr i Europa är det många som är skeptiska till de här tillgångslagen, fastän vad de bygger är en ny verklighet. Det är nästan som ny mark, som alltså Bitcoin är som någon slags ny jord som byggs över hela världen, och sen kommer det byggas massa teknologier ovanpå det. Alltså kryptoteknologierna kommer, jag tror det kan vara en av de största ekonomiska teknologierna i historien. Alltså sen ett helt nytt betalsystem, ett helt nytt sätt att verifiera saker, och en teknologi som kommer lösa otroligt många problem. Så det är superspännande.
Men du, apropå det du säger då, du har ju tillsammans satt vi Cashflowpodden på följen, och där var ju du ganska tidigt ute och sa det att man fan, vi ska ha en liten krydda med lite Bitcoin, behöver vi ha också, och sen ska du ha någonting som är bra, det är Tesla också. Då tänkte jag, men Tesla blir bra, det blev Investor, så och nu efter då vad som vi pratade om för något avsnitt sen, där det faktiskt var så att en viss person vann det amerikanska presidentvalet. Då har det rasslat till rätt bra i den portföljen. Ja. Jag tror Tesla-delen har väl gått över 50% i Cashflowpodden, portföljens delen.
Ja, och tänk om du hade köpt lite Bitcoin också. Det hade varit ännu bättre.
Precis. Den är ju tokhög också nu då. Så att,
nej, jag tror de kommande 4 åren blir väldigt spännande. Och just med Trump i administration. Han är den mest presidenten man har haft i Vita huset på någonsin. Så att hålla lite Bitcoin är nog bra framöver. Och det är smidigt att kunna göra via de här olika certifikaten som finns på Avanza Nordnet. Så.
Men kommer nästa fråga då, som alla frågar sig. Men är det för sent att investera nu då? För nu har jag missat den här uppgången.
Och den segwayar vi in i intervjun med Jean-Marie, för den frågan ställer jag till honom exakt. Tycker han svarar på den 10 gånger bättre än vad jag kan svara på den.
Ja, grymt. Då lämnar vi över till ekonomiguren som gör en fantastisk intervju här.
Och det är på engelska, men alla kan ju engelska i Sverige, så vi köttar på. Today I have Jean-Marie, or JM as we will call him in the podcast, who is exactly what for CoinShares? I know you...
I'm the founder and CEO.
Founder and CEO of CoinShares. So CoinShares obviously was one of the first crypto certificates that you could buy in Sweden. You were a pioneer in the Swedish industry, and so we're super excited to have you here and see what you've been doing in the Swedish market, promoting crypto, pushing it to the regular folks. So not everyone has to have these digital wallets everywhere, but now you can pick up your products, the XPD products on Avanza, Nordnet, and you really help the Swedish market to move into a better state with crypto. I'm curious, just for the listeners as well, CoinShares is obviously a big company. I think it's Europe's biggest crypto company or something like that, right? Tell me a little bit about, who are you and what do you do?
Sure. So thanks for having us, Christian, today. Just looking at CoinShares today is European first franchise, specialized in investment. It's an investment firm specialized in asset management in digital asset. We also have now a US version of that, which we started growing this year. CoinShares really started in 2016 as CoinShares brand, but really the story started much earlier than that in 2013, when we start to move from the commodity market, where we're running a hedge fund since 1998, into crypto. And the first expression of our crypto appetite came as a hedge fund, because we were coming from the hedge fund world. So we said, well, we know hedge fund, let's do another hedge fund, because the access was complicated. But very quickly we realized, funny enough, that the idea we have, which was how do we sprinkle freedom in your investment portfolio, was not really impactful enough and scalable enough just for a hedge fund product, because the distribution of this product was very complicated or very limiting. And so what we start doing is, okay, well, how do we upscale from where we are in a very limited distribution framework to something where we can address a wider audience, a much more retail audience. And what we discover at that point is like the power of distribution of the ETF market in general, which are fantastic products because they are addressable to a wider audience by the fact they are listed. So as long as a client you are able to have a brokerage account, your broker gives you the appropriateness test to let you trade the product on the exchange, then you can trade, buy and click, and also sell very, very easily. And for us, that was kind of coming from the hedge fund world where the distribution is always very complicated, like kind of a big eye opener. So we jump into the bandwagon, I would say, of indexation and passive asset management. I would say late 2015, early 2016, and we were about to launch our very own platform in Malta when we had a phone call, funny enough, from Sweden, who said, guys, we know you because you came to Sweden to spoke a couple of times with KNC management. NASDAQ is interesting to talk to you because you are fully regulated and you are the only regulated guy in Europe. Are you able to do this kind of distress acquisition? Because otherwise on Monday morning, we won't be able to reopen the market for XBT provider. And that's really how we came in Sweden. We come in Sweden on the 8th of June 2016 with my business partner, Danny Masters. We flew there from Cyprus and Jersey to Sweden, to Stockholm. We met the bankruptcy estate manager of KNC. So KNC was this kind of PE VC darling back in the days, who was at the forefront of mining in cryptocurrencies in Sweden, kind of a very Swedish only company. It was a fantastic company, for enough, which didn't manage to do the kind of upgrade in the chips reduction race. And so they created this kind of, within KNC, this kind of, I would say, crown jewel, which was XBT provider. At the time, there was $10 million of AUM, which was basically a few Swedish Stockholm-based investors who were already aware of crypto, and the rest is history. So we take over this company. We managed to reopen on Monday morning without halting trading too long, and then we started to turn the company around. So the only job we do in terms of due diligence was, okay, is there the liability matching, or is there the asset effectively matching the liability we owe to the market? And we have to restructure the debt with the creditors, and we were, effectively going back to the market. So it was a fantastic turnaround situation. which has been very good for CoinShares and its shareholders since then, but also very good for the industry. I think at the peak in Sweden, we had 70,000 single clients, mainly on Avanza and Nordnet. So it was a very good, I would say, adventure for us. Being, nobody in our team is Swedish. We're all kind of British and French, so it was kind of a very interesting journey in Sweden. And
you were definitely like the originals here in the ETF and ETP market. So we're really happy to have had your services. I was one of the holders early on as well of your Bitcoin products, and we'll go into more, about CoinShares and this Crypto Puppies campaign that you're now launching. But I would like to hear a little bit about more personal, like why did you get involved in crypto? Like, what's your story?
My story is like I'm a commodity trader. Danny Masters, Russell Newton, and myself were running a commodity hedge fund back in the days. The hedge fund was seeded by Louis Bacon from Moore Capital, and basically we met around the commodity narrative. And the commodity cycle started in the late 90s until the 2010, 2011. It's restarting these days, but it was kind of a long super cycle in commodities. And my business partner made the entire career in commodity. And so we just stopped with hedge fund activity, and we're like, okay, well, what next in our partnership? We kind of like each other. We can work with each other. We know the strengths and the weakness of the partners, so we know what we can do together. And we were also running a regulated business. So we say, okay, well, is there a point in shutting that down to restart next door, or are we staying together and thinking about the future together? And we always joke saying that our business partnership outlasts every single one of our weddings or personal relationships. So it's a very long-term business relationship we have between the partners. And we were like, okay, well, what next? We did a bit of, I would say, psychoanalysis about our real kind of value in terms of investors. My business partner spending 25 years in commodity, were very, very focused on we are commodity investors, and doing some work and some kind of I would say reflection on that, we discovered that we were very much deep value investors, and the deeper the value, the better. So if you look at quotes from our business partner in 1998, and oil was trading around $10, and they were saying already that oil should be $100 plus, and within the cycle it manifested. So we have been known for making this kind of very, very I would say important call on the market. We look at crypto, we realize crypto has the very, very same property as some of the oil market.
And when was this? You made this realization? What year was that?
It's 2013, realistically.
Wow. Already in 2013, huh?
It's 2013. We look at my business partner is spending a lot of time, Danny is spending a lot of time in the US, I'm spending a lot of time in Hong Kong. Danny discovered crypto on the golf course by having discussion with different people, and then start doing his own research. I discovered crypto by being taken into a mining farm in Shenzhen, which was more of a health hazard than a real, very beautiful mining site as we can see today. So it was very kind of different angle to approach it and to discover it. But
very rudimentary start. You found it in a mining rig in China, basically.
A friend of mine introduced me to a guy who was mining in Shenzhen already at scale. And so I crossed the border between Hong Kong and Shenzhen. You cross the bridge, a car picked me up. For the story, they put a baklava on me so I don't know where I was going. They drive me for an hour and a half. And
ended up in a warehouse somewhere. Huh?
Probably not that far away from where they picked me up, but it felt like we were turning in all direction. And then we end up like in this place where you had like dust on the floor, dust, like a ground, brown ground on the floor. You had like dust everywhere. You have leaky AC, and electricity cable running everywhere. So it was kind of an interesting setup.
But somehow that sold you right on the idea. No?
Well, it's just like it just kind of get me curious. So we just look at it, because then we start doing research and say, okay, well, how is this Bitcoin stuff working? Because back then there was nothing but Bitcoin.
Yeah, exactly.
So we start looking at, okay, Bitcoin, 21 million, okay, interesting. And then we start digging further and further. And Hong Kong back in the day was very, very busy with crypto. Bitfinex was created pretty much there. BitMEX was also created there. Like there is a lot of, OKX was created there. But before that, the Chinese exchanges was already very strong. Like you get like BTCC in China, you get BTC China, you get like a lot of crypto company who were, some of them are not existing anymore, but Hong Kong was a very big hotspot in terms of like I would say, financial engineering, crypto
startups
financial
kind of
innovation very, very early on. And so I get the privilege to be there, understanding what was happening. My business partner was kind of doing the same thing in Florida and in the US, and eventually we met in the middle and said, well, what are we doing with this stuff? And that's how we'd say, well, this has the potential to go much higher than where it is right now. It's an investment thesis. We develop an investment thesis, and we just go from there. Our only regret, we probably didn't buy enough. But, we should have. We laugh about it a lot. Saying we should have not run a business. We should just buy.
Just about Bitcoin.
The money we spend on running a business, we should have just bought Bitcoin. And it's always.
What was the price of Bitcoin there around that time?
I think we start buying Bitcoin around. PA we start buying around on $200, $100 price mark. Which is still very expensive. I was in Miami a couple of weeks ago at the Cantor conference, and I was sitting next to a gentleman who said, my last Bitcoin price entry was 99 cents, and I was like, okay, that's kind of very
and he still holds it, or he lost it in a wallet somewhere?
And he's still holding, and he will hold it forever. So it's just like you get this kind of people who are really long-term holder and will never sell, because a lot of people, and we see it in our clientele as well in XBT provider, a lot of people are buying this product not for the natural kind of trading or short-term investment time cycles. They buy it and look at it for 10, 20 years plus exposure. We get clients in CoinShares XBT provider today, which are with us since 2015. And when you go speak with like an Amundi or like a BlackRock of this world and say, we have clients which have been with us for 10 years, they look at you and say, that's impossible, that doesn't exist. And they say, because the long-term client is like, in Europe is like 18 months. And it's like, no, we get some people which are with us for a very long time because they believe in the journey we are on, which is beyond the journey of CoinShares, which is the journey of crypto and the journey of Bitcoin and Ethereum and all this kind of other asset class.
Very interesting. So obviously you're an expert in the field and an early believer. I was looking at it myself around 2012, but I didn't buy. My friends were buying Bitcoin. I was like, I'll wait a bit, I wish I bought more. But now, I mean, you believe you went on the bandwagon and you built this company and the XBT product. And the latest launch now, because I think Asia, as you were mentioning, Asia and North America especially, maybe even South America now, would you say Europe is actually the last to get on the wagon or the most reserved, or what do you think, given your extensive traveling?
It's tricky. The problem in Europe is like the market is very fragmented. So for people to realize what's really happening in Europe, it's a bit complicated because the picture is not that simple. Europe has been at the forefront for the last 10 years, and like where stuff was still moving, albeit slowly, it was completely blocked in other countries.
Oh, interesting.
Asia has always been like a kind of a lab for crypto, and between Singapore and Hong Kong, a lot of things has been happening there over the last 10 years. The US has been completely blocked, and a lot of business moved out. And so what we tend to, however, we have a very strong thesis at CoinShares that when the US will open, they will open very quickly because it's one language, maybe two if you include Spanish. It's one or two regulator between the CFTC and the SEC. It's one addressable market. And even in terms of investment thesis, people living on the coast, to make it simple, invest very much the same way, pretty much doing it themselves, like in Sweden, was people who live in the internal part of the country are much more investing on a kind of advisory basis, and that's much simpler because when you come to Europe, Swedish people, for instance, don't consume financial services the same way as a Danish person or the same way as a Finnish person, and so that's, I would say, neighbor, but like think about Italian or Spanish. So the kind of fragmentation of the market is massive. The regulatory requirement, despite the passporting in Europe, is also not that it's existing, but it's not that powerful as people make you feel it is, because it's still different languages, it's still different regulators, and more importantly, it's different culture. And when we talk about investment, we need really to understand culture, because the way people invest in Italy or in Spain is or even in France is very different from Sweden, for instance. And what we tend to realize is like the more people have a control of their retirement plans, the more the investment decision change. And so we tend to see the penetration rate of the ETF distribution market as a whole, not specifically to crypto, is almost inversely proportional to the amount of welfare in the country when it comes to is the state giving you the power to manage your retirement plan on your own, or is the state making you an assisted person where you don't have any control and you just have a check at the end? And in Sweden or in Germany, it is very much, the ISK in Sweden is a very strong product, and people are like investing in that from a very, very young age. And the same thing in Germany. Was in France, you just contribute to your pension and that's about it. And so people are doing on the side real estate and other stuff, but they don't really do this kind of self-investment. And you can see it in like massive franchise like BlackRock penetration rate. They're completely failing in France despite having their headquarters in France, and they just do very, very well in other countries. So, but that's an American firm, and they don't really understand. They're very successful. So don't get me wrong, but it's very difficult for an American firm coming with an American mindset to understand the cultural fragmentation of Europe and how different. You speak to an American, they tell you, "Oh yeah, Germany, Europe." They don't tell you. They think it's just a state, effectively, like
like in America.
Or Nevada.
Yeah,
they
exactly.
don't realize that people are like very, very different and speak different language.
Yeah, would you say Sweden is positive or negative as a country to crypto, or?
So I think Sweden was at the forefront, and Sweden is kind of this kind of lab in Europe. I was very shocked the first time I come to Stockholm, which was in 2016. I never had a chance to come before for tourism, so I came for this business trip to buy XBT provider, and the first stuff you are welcome with when you walk into Arlanda is like Stockholm and Sweden, the land of R&D. And that's how many patent and trademark we are filing a year, and we are the leader in Europe. And for me, living between Paris and London, I was like, I never really pay attention to that. But then when you look at the amount of fantastic company, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's like Spotify, which are kind of like coming out from on the tech side, and Autovir, or like there's so many great company coming out of Sweden that people don't really realize, but they move directly to the US for they don't even bother coming to Germany or to France. And I think KNC, it's funny because I was thinking about it this morning, but KNC was very much at the forefront of the R&D in mining very, very early on, 2013, 2014. It was the darling of the VC. They get an investment from Axel Venture back in the day, so it was never heard before in crypto. The competition like Bitfury were dying to get any form of institutional investment, and it's very to some degree echo to Northold's story right now, where Northold go to bankruptcy and KNC was in bankruptcy, but that's the kind of life cycle of innovation. And
you mentioned, go ahead, sorry.
But like what I'm saying here is like the same way Sweden tried to be at the forefront of the renewable battery business. They try to be at the forefront of crypto innovation. There were some people involved in that which were, I would say, forward-looking and visionary when it comes to that. They didn't manage to complete the journey, sometime because effectively the society remained very conservative, and the politics remained very conservative. And if you look at the noise in Sweden right now around crypto, when BlackRock filed an ETF, it was a big boom in our world, because I would have never believed BlackRock would do something like that back in the day when I started. You have an article in the French newspaper, in the German newspaper. Nobody talked about it in Sweden. It was like a no news. And so it ended up being in this kind of situation where crypto is not really on the forefront or on the agenda of Swedish investors, but for a minority. And that's really what we're trying to do is like, how do we start opening up the discussion and talk to more people?
And I think what you're mentioning is really important there, because living in Sweden, obviously, I've noticed the trend has shifted somewhat, but still very skeptical. Many consider it scam or fraud, or completely non-tangible assets.
It is non-tangible to some degree, but it's funny because Sweden, when I came to Sweden the first time, the first thing I did was to take money out in Arlanda because I didn't have I didn't have a SEK on me.
Yeah.
So I say, okay, well, let's, Revolut back in the day was not even existing or very little. So I drew money at the ATM. But then I couldn't pay pretty much anywhere because people say, no, we only take card payment. And I was like, okay, so this is a very, very digital economy already type of environment. Like the bank ID is fantastic. If people get bank ID in Europe, it would be much easier to open it. Like the way you guys think about digitalization of the economy is pretty much on par with what Estonia is doing, but it's a much bigger country. And like, so I'm very surprised that despite this kind of very forward-looking, tech-friendly to the wide degree that the Swedish population is, like crypto has so little audience. And you see it, like you look at company like Safelo, you look at a company like Goobit or TX Provider, like a lot of companies try to do something in Sweden, and mainly they failing or fail because there was like no support from the banking system to let them effectively on-ramp and off-ramp people, and like so, and and the SFSA to some degree put some very big warnings saying that don't invest, it's all scam, so the Swedish Central Bank put some very negative rhetoric. Then we get the politician attacking on the ESG front. It was kind of a which is funny because KNC back in the day was mining a lot through geothermal, we're mining through hydro, so there was like very ESG friendly in a way, and very at the forefront of how mining is done today, which is getting more and more greener and greener.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe it has to do with fear and not being able to control it. But yeah, we've seen a change now and slowly. And I think what you guys are doing, tell me a little bit about this Crypto Puppies launch that you did in Sweden. Why'd you do this?
So first of all, I have to say that all the credit goes to our marketing head, Benoit. And Benoit used to run Ledger marketing team, which is a French cybersecurity who does Ledger now. So they very, very much, him and his team are very, very much thinking out of the box. They don't come from asset management or investment, so they try to bring something a bit different and think orthogonally.
I think it's genius. I mean, I was on the subway, I see a big picture of a puppy, and then it's like CoinShares. I'm like,
and so what we discover is like really that. First of all, yes, we can put an advertisement on DI. We can put an advertising on kind of the usual financial kind of.
Platform.
The reality is like we keep talking to the same people. So by talking to the same people more and more, our kind of marginal impact is decreasing. So Benoit came out with this idea and said, well, look guys, we need to just change the way we're thinking about that, because we need to if we want to get Sweden to discover crypto better, we need to stop talking about to the people who know about it and start talking to the people who don't know about CoinShares, don't know about crypto in general. So we need to be the opinion leader and the kind of.
Och här vill vi passa på att tacka dagens sponsor CoinShares. Intresset för digitala valutor som Bitcoin växer, men det är bara 9% av svenskar som äger krypto jämfört med 15% i Västeuropa enligt CoinShares då, som gjorde en undersökning 2024. Det här speglar en viss misstro. Om rätt strategi så kan krypto bli en värdefull del av portföljen, är något som jag brukar säga. CoinShares har gjort en analys att man behöver bara 4-5% av kryptoexponering för en optimal balans mellan risk och avkastning. Man ska tänka på Bitcoin som en krydda med hög risk, reward och se till att behålla den runt 4-5%. I Sverige kan du enkelt investera i bitcoin genom CoinShares XBT Providers, reglerade krypto-ETPer. De finns på Avanza och Nordnet. Sök bara på bitcoin XBT till exempel. De handlas lika enkelt som aktier och fonder. Vill du veta mer så klicka på länken i beskrivningen.
Voice of the industry in Sweden. And so we use a kind of a Swedish agency to help us with that, to help us think about, okay, what is important for Sweden, what is important for Swedish people. And we discovered that dogs, especially Swedish breed, are very, very important in Sweden, to the point that the Swedish government forced you to register your dog on the public ledger with the name and everything.
Passport when they travel, everything.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's a very, very controlled environment to also protect the breed and protect everything. So that's kind of something which is very important for a lot of Swedes. So instead of like talking to people who just invest in crypto, let's talk to dog lovers and try to get them to embrace crypto and see a bit more. And it's kind of emotional connection to the dog. It's an emotion. You look at the video. The dogs are absolutely cute. You look at the picture in the tube. You can't not look at these dogs. They're just like so cute. You want to cuddle them. So it's a
bit of a paradigm, because it's something you don't trust with something you trust, kind of, and it's supposed to build that link.
It is the power of advertising. It is the power of subliminal message. We are trying to mentalize the entire story to get people to. We don't need them to trust it. We just need them to just like, okay, let me be a bit more curious. Let me be a bit more education, and let's just visit coinshare.se. Let's try to understand in Swedish what it means. And this brand has been in Sweden since 2016. We never had a day where we altered trading. We never had a single client complain. So we're there for the long term. We're extending our platform in 2025 with new coins. So you get plenty of new stuff which are coming to Sweden. So we're very excited about the market, and we want to make sure that we can effectively present that to more and more investors and more. I think that XBT provider is a investment product who created the more wealth for its user, if not the most is unverifiable hypothesis, but we believe that it is probably the platform which in its history created the most of single millionaire by investment in a single product. And we can see it, people who are selling on XBT provider in general, we have a 2.5x. For one guy leaving the platform, we need to find 2.5 to replace him, because he makes so much money that the average ticket is kind of like a 2x and a half. So we need to be able to replace that.
Yeah, no, it's been a phenomenal run, and I'm a little curious as well about the future. I mean, now we're bordering $100,000 for a Bitcoin here, and we just had these major elections in America where a crypto-friendly president is going to take office in January. Where do you see crypto going from here? The next 50 years?
Look. You need to separate crypto and Bitcoin. It's like kind of like two different stuff to start with.
Yes.
I think there is a very interesting paper in the American Affairs Journal over the last week by a gentleman called Russell Napier, which is a very strong researcher. And Russell Napier came to the conclusion that effectively we went from a monetary system we know about to a monetary system who has no name and no framework. And realistically, what is about to happen, and like President Trump is hinting at, is like realistically a monetary system where Bitcoin start to have a very strong place. So if you'd like me a view on 10 to 15 years, I think you're probably going to end up in a world where Bitcoin will be a reserve asset for a lot of central bank, where government will put Bitcoin on the balance sheet. And not sell like Germany has been doing for the whole summer. And so there's the little exercise cost Germany a couple of billions of dollars, by the way, to the tax in terms of taxpayer money, which is insane. So I think you're going to be a very, very different world in terms of like what is the reserve asset, and the bet
So it will be moving away from dollar more into Bitcoin.
That's the rhetoric you hear more and more, and if you look at we always said at CoinShare, which is very much paraphrasing Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett, is like don't short the US. Be very careful about shorting them because when the US go on with some things, they go all in, and you tend not to be able to catch up. You saw it in the mining industry. Or crypto mining, they ban it, but then when they open it at length. But you saw it as well in the space exploration, where the number of launch in the US were plateauing for 20 years, but plateauing everywhere in the world. And if you look at the distribution graph over the last 18 months, it kind of like spike in a way where it's out of control. And they're taking such a leadership there that nobody can catch up. And so to the point that I think Merkel over the weekend was saying it's a big risk for European kind of I would say on sovereignty in terms of data and web access and all this kind of stuff.
So what do you think, someone who asks me, probably every day I get that question from my followers, is it too late to invest in Bitcoin?
I think there is a very famous quote, which I keep telling to people all the time. It's like, people discover Bitcoin when they deserve to.
That's right, yeah.
And so, it's never too late. The question is like, do you think the current system is failing? And so if you believe the current system is failing, then you need to diversify away from it. And crypto, especially Bitcoin, is an expression and probably the purest expression of it. If you look at, and so buying Bitcoin is never a bad decision. Trading Bitcoin in general is a bad decision. You can see that people trading in and out in general get smoked over long enough data point because you always buy at the wrong time and sell at the wrong time. But we see that there was a funny article over the weekend of this guy who has been dollar cost averaging on Coinbase for the last I don't know many years. I think he was averaging $30 per week. So he invested $85,000, averaging $30 per week. So you can see the number of weeks, and he just crossed $1 million of kind of value on Coinbase. So he was, I think, making a video. I think I retweeted it on my Twitter account, where you can see the kind of like all the buy, and just buy what you can afford to buy. Don't put the house on it. Just buy every time in a consistent manner. Dollar cost average into it is definitely the best way to do it. The product at CoinShare are there to help you with that. You can buy a fraction of it all the time. So just use the XBT provider and DCA into it.
Interesting. What's your handle on X if people want to follow you or your thoughts?
It's GM Mognetti.
All right, wonderful. And where do you see CoinShares in 10 years?
Look, where do we see CoinShare? I don't think we saw CoinShare where it is right now 10 years ago. To be fair, we didn't think BlackRock would have an ETF 10 years ago when we started. So I think CoinShare today is number one in Europe. It's a listed company. We'd love to. We say it many times on our investor call. We'd love to see CoinShare listed in the US. We'd love to see CoinShare a bigger company as it is. We see CoinShare as an international role to play as a global franchise for digital assets. So we're now in the US. We're going to grow the US. There's probably an expression of that in Asia as well at some point, and in Latin America. It's very, very early days. CoinShare has been buying a business a year for the last 4 years, so we also have a very consolidation game to play in the industry. We were one of the few company, not VC backed, not PE backed, but backed by our own shareholder money and partners' money. So we kind of put our money where our mouths were, and I've been invested in a very kind of I would say return on investment, return on equity key focus. We have been very, very good at growing our balance sheet and growing our net asset value. We've been not that good at growing our shareholder value. Like if you look at the way CoinShare is traded today, the stock price is very, very depressed compared to what it should be. It's down to Sweden. We listed on NASDAQ on the main market. Again, we're not a Swedish company. the Swedish appetite for crypto is very limited. So
Yeah.
we're doing better, but we're not exactly where we want to be. And
Do you compare yourself a little bit with like MicroStrategy? So CoinShares.
no, like look, we can't compare to MicroStrategy because MicroStrategy is basically now a Bitcoin reserve kind of
Yeah.
company.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic, it's a fantastic company. What Michael is building there is like a very good idea. Somehow you can wonder if there's a limitation to it, or what is the kind of like, when does it stop?
Yeah.
He tends to believe there is no stop. We are much more cautious. We are selling investment as a day-to-day job, so we never talk about guarantee. We never talk about
Oh, he's very bullish.
So,
Yeah.
so we never talk about risk-free investment. So we always kind of like very guarded in our statement. We are regulated in every way, and say so. We don't doing advisory. We try to provide the right amount of product to our clients and make sure they make their own research, provides them some research, provides them some education content, which allows them to make their own conclusion on what is the right amount of Bitcoin or Ethereum for their portfolio allocation.
Awesome. I said we wouldn't do too long this interview. I just want to finish up with a quick session, this or that I usually do sometimes.
This or that. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so if you have to choose one, right? Bitcoin or gold?
Bitcoin.
Okay, wow, I was hoping so. Ethereum or Solana?
Ethereum for the decentralization, Solana for the throughput.
Interesting. Real estate or Bitcoin?
Bitcoin.
All right. Meme
Grant
coins.
Cardone, come on, like that's a question.
Yeah, come on.
Grant Cardone asked this question over the weekend to his follower. Was like, that's a ridiculous question.
All right, good. Meme coins or NFTs?
But funny enough, all right, let's just like go back 1 second, like Bitcoin or real estate. Funny enough,
there's some similarities to it.
Well, there is some similarities in the sense that the whole story around Bitcoin strategic reserve in the US, which is pushed by the Trump administration and the Senator Loomis, it's a 200,000 Bitcoin acquisition per year over the next 5 years. So it's a million Bitcoin on balance sheet at the end of the mandate, effectively, of President Trump.
Do you think that will happen? I mean, it's not settled.
I think there is a strong. Look again. President Trump has made a lot of declaration in the political arena. If 15% of what he said they would be doing is happening, it's already a massive difference compared to what we got in the US for the last 4 years.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So I can only wish for that to happen because I think it would be transformative. I also think it will create a fear of missing from other states because so you're going to get more states. So China going to replicate and Russia going to replicate. And so it's going to be very interesting in terms of games theory to see who is playing what. But El Salvador has done it for a long time. I would want to see now a real, not a real country, but like a bigger country. With El Salvador is a totally real country, but like
I mean, El Salvador, they must be doing amazing now.
They have like $600 million of Bitcoin on the balance sheet now.
Crazy.
So the president did a fantastic trade. I think the IMF was crying because it just like. They were hoping for them to go bankrupt, so they kind of proving IMF wrong and all this kind of stuff. So it's fantastic. But to go back to my point, it's like the US are seeing it as at least the people in support of this proposal are seeing it as as transformative move for the US as the US buying New York or Manhattan, or from the Dutch, or the US buying California from Mexico, or the US buying Louisiana from the French, or the US buying Alaska from the Russian. So you get a very strong thematic building now in the US where effectively Bitcoin is not real estate, but Bitcoin is the ground on which you build real estate. It's a very so Bitcoin is Manhattan, and you build downtown on Manhattan, not...
Yeah, and that's really interesting because I wanted to follow up with a question now that you're saying it, because many people say, well, Bitcoin has no utility. There's no payments systems, or not many, in place, etc., etc. What would you say to someone like that?
Like, the story about Bitcoin utility is like, it's the same story as like, what is backing Bitcoin? It's like as silly as that, So let's go back to the US dollar. What is backing the US dollar is 3 million US military across 166 countries in the world. And that's what makes In God We Trust. Without the 3 million US military deployed over the world, there is no In God We Trust. You know, there is no, you know, without the Fifth Fleet and the Sixth Fleet and the Pacific Fleet, there is no Bitcoin, there is no US dollar domination right now. And I think that's kind of helped created the you know, so if anything, what is backing Bitcoin and creating this kind of uniqueness of Bitcoin is this compute power which is attached to Bitcoin. The Bitcoin computer or Bitcoin supercomputer, which is completely decentralized, it's the biggest single computer in the world. Not a single state, not a single university, not a single corporate, because it's a very big corporate game as well, can have that much hashing power and that much compute power per second. So it's a very,
and that will only increase, obviously. Yeah.
Well, that will only increase as you add more miners to the tape, as you add more miners to the network, and effectively what's happening there is like you are mining for security. What is also interesting there is like right now mining is an economic game, okay? I.e. people are trying to make some money out of it, and there is always a theory, okay, what happens when there is no more reward attached to it? And people are only paying for transaction fees. What has completely escaped people right now is like mining and Bitcoin is becoming a national sovereignty topic very, very quickly. Because imagine the entire mining power is in the US, and in mining, imagine you are a non-aligned country, i.e. you're not very friendly with the US, call it one of the BRIC. Well, if the US controls the mining power one way or another, they can decide to ban you from the network. So at some point, it's going to become very, very important for every single nation state to have their own mining power to be able to broadcast a transaction without having to rely on another nation, which might be friendly or tomorrow not friendly. And so the same way you have these national sovereignty issues around, cryptography, you will have it around mining infrastructure because they are the gatekeeper and to the outer world. So if you don't want to recreate SWIFT, where effectively Iran can't put a message through SWIFT or Venezuela, for sake of an argument, well, you're going to have to get a network where you also have your own mining power. So it go one step further. It's like, where are all the microprocessor and all the ASICs being built? Because what the US has been very good at doing is like putting ban on import of certain product. So how do you create your national champion for microprocessor so as you can mine and create the mining infrastructure independently of what people say you are able to buy or sell on the international market? And so that's why it's very, very important for Europe. And people like Xavier Niel, for instance, in France, are advocating massively for AI champion in Europe, but the same way they are advocating as well for microprocessor champion in Europe, because we don't have enough independence in the way we're creating our own microprocessor, and we are at mercy both on the left and on the right of the American and the Chinese. And it's like, how do we become self-sufficient so as tomorrow we can have our own version? So as long as we don't do it as a bad fiasco as our own GPS network who never worked, we really need to get a European vertical for microprocessor of scale and for Bitcoin mining and for mining in general.
Oh, well, it's so interesting talking to you. I mean, you come from aspects and insights that others just don't have access to as well. So thanks so much for sharing, JM. And the last one was meme coins or NFTs. Do you think there's any future in any of those?
I think NFTs, there's a lot of stuff to build on NFTs, whether it's digital art, but digital art is kind of you're just scratching the surface. There is much more stuff working on. I'll give you an example.
Absolutely.
There is a strong thesis around, right now staking is a big component. Right now staking is very inefficient because you can't really sell a node because the node needs to be unwind, you sell the asset. So Ethereum case is the best case. You need to deploy 32 Ethereum into the node. If you want, you can't sell the node directly. You have to unstake the Ethereum, sell the Ethereum. So there is a gap in the liquidity there. It would be much more elegant if you can sell your node directly to the market.
And a gas fee and everything.
Exactly. So the question is like, how do you attach probably an NFT to that? So effectively, the NFT becomes a representation of something else, like a node or something in the digital economy. I think NFT has a lot of stuff, has a lot of growth potential in the entire Web3 environment. Web3 as we know it today is
digital ownership,
as at the surface as the internet was in 1992. Wow. Is kind of very basic and rudimentary, and the use of it are only kind of bad use or like misuse, but there is plenty of kind of like way to grow out of it. What maybe to leave you on one thought, it's like people tend to forget that building great stuff takes a lot of time, when Amazon started, Amazon was selling book, and it was 1998. Amazon today has some very, very brand new plane, which are keeping some of the European airport open because they're using it for logistic. And some airports are only operated by Amazon, because there is no passenger traffic. It's only freight from Amazon. Yeah. Nobody in 1998 would have think Amazon would become what it is today. I don't think even Jeff Bezos had kind of a final vision of what Amazon will be in between AWS and all this kind of stuff. And the journey evolved and the journey changed as the maturity kind of like take place. And the internet in the early days was only used for nefarious activities. The internet today is used for kid education, and there's not a single kid not at the restaurant, not watching a screen, rightly or wrongly, to let the parents have dinner.
That's a good comparison, because NFTs were used for nefarious activities as well in the beginning,
exactly.
But eventually,
to give chance to technology, as usual, like with AI, and Elon is very vocal about that, there is a right and wrong way to use it, and we need to think about how do we use stuff the right way so as it doesn't become like an evil by definition. And then we need to just like self-govern ourselves a little bit on that stuff and not allow for everything and making.
Because you can say the same about Bitcoin. It was nefarious. I mean, mostly cartels and drug. Yeah, lords.
But like it evolved, and like so people. But like the problem is like the evolution of the underlying is much faster than the evolution of people thinking, and so Bitcoin kind of like clean itself up very quickly and kind of like become something which can go today on the balance sheet of the American government.
It's crazy. That's a huge change.
Whilst people who are regulating us are still thinking is something for money laundering. So it's kind of like this kind of dichotomy between perception and reality. Unfortunately, perception is reality for many people, and it takes time for
especially in Sweden.
It takes time to change mentality. So there is a very famous German philosopher who used to say that revolution happened one tombstone at a time. So it's like, and it's a little bit the same way here, where preconceived ideas are difficult to kill. It takes time to change them, but over time we will change it. And look, if anything, Amazon took 40 years to be where they are today, or maybe 30 years. Crypto is like 15 years old, not even that. So it's very, very in its infancy, and it really started to accelerate from 2017. Anything before 2017 is like prehistory of Bitcoin and crypto. Ethereum ICO, is really kind of like I would say the pin to say something is really transforming to build an economy and an infrastructure around technology. And effectively, Ethereum or Solana are really tech stock. You're really betting on the technology under and its youth. What Bitcoin is really this kind of digital gold reserve of value.
Like you said, the land to build the infrastructure on. Super interesting talking to you, GM. And I've learned so much, and I'm sure our listeners will learn a lot. And just thank you so much for what you're doing for the crypto space. I'm excited myself, and I think Sweden hopefully will be one of the countries that warms up more and more, as we learn more.
And we're really working on it, and we're really trying to help. And if there is any forum we need to participate, or we need to engage more with the Swedish community. We don't speak Swedish still. It's a bit of one of our pitfalls, but to be fair, Swedish people speak perfect English compared to French, so it's an easy way for us to connect.
Because no one speaks Swedish, So
nobody speaks French either anymore. So it's
that's true.
So it's not an excuse, but it's very easy to communicate in Sweden, and we always have a great time whenever we come to Sweden. So. On that note, I'll probably be in Sweden next week, but it's a fantastic place to be, and we really like everything we build there. So we just hope we can keep building.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. We'll round off the interview here, and remember to check out the XBT on Avanza.Nordnet and CoinShares websites as well. So thank you so much, James.
CoinShares is a listed company as well. So if you don't believe, if you don't believe in crypto itself, you can buy the company. Investment.
On the casino instead, you know.
You can decide where it's a flying wheel. You can decide where you want to be in the picking order, because as a business it's a very successful company, but also as an investment on the line there's plenty of good product to buy, so you can make your decision yourself and make your own research.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much, and I wish you a wonderful rest of the day. So
thank you,
thanks so much, Jim.
Bye bye.
Alltså, jag sa det till dig tidigare, och vilken jävla grej du gör. Alltså, fantastiskt bra intervju här, Christian.
Alltså jag var så pumped efter den här intervjun att jag gick ut och köpte mer bitcoin faktiskt. Not financial advice. Men vad jag gjorde var att jag la en del utav företagets kassa i bitcoin. För nu ligger den liksom på ett sparkonto med 2% ränta. Och tänkte jag liksom, det här är pengar jag inte behöver på kommande 5 år. Vart kommer de prestera bäst? Om vi ser bitcoin historiskt så har den gett 60% per år liksom. Alltså, det lär slå 2% räntan. Men så jag la 50 000 av bolagets kassa där. Och det som är spännande när man snackar med den här killen, alltså han är ju en OG sedan 2013 när han var ute i Shenzhen i Kina och besökte de här mining-faciliteterna där folk satt i liksom röd dammlokaler och bara maskinerna surrade, och de här printade ju pengar, men det visste de ju inte då, alla de här kineserna. Och bara så spännande, och där liksom han själv säger det att vi köpte liksom, men man önskar man köpte mer. Jag kommer ihåg när jag var 2013 så kollade jag också på bitcoin, och jag hade kompisar som bara YOLO liksom köpte 5 bitcoin var, och jag köpte inte. Men första köpet var väl 2017 eller något sånt där, men
ja, men grejen är att det är ju tillbaka till det också. Vi vet ju inte om vi hade haft kvar det heller. Det är ju lätt hänt att ta hem vinst kanske, och så säljer man bort sig och så. Det finns
från 100 till $200. Oh shit, jag tar vinsten liksom.
Ja, precis.
Det som var häftigt, han avslöjade i slutet av intervjun här, var ju att han betalade 2013, så gav han, eller om det var 14, så gav han $1,000 till sin personliga tränare i bitcoin. Så han tog bitcoin-betalning istället. Och det är liksom 1000x eller vad det är liksom idag. Jag har inte exakt koll, men det är galen betalning. Så.
Ja, det är grymt. Men vilket jävla mervärde vi levererar i detta avsnittet alltså.
Jag menar, det här är en utav topparna inom världen. Alltså de leder Europas största kryptobolag. Och vi får sitta ner med en one-on-one intervju med dem. Det är ju fantastiskt. Så lyssna noga på den igen. Och han pratar ju 90% av tiden liksom, som det ska vara. För han sitter ju på kunskapen.
Och det som är så jävla bra här också, det är ju det med våra produktionsverktyg, så har vi kommer vi kunna leverera en hel del småklipp också på den här intervjun som är jätteintressanta liksom.
Nej, men så podden tuggar på, och där finns ju en möjlighet också att backa oss. Vi gör ju det här 21 avsnitt nu. Allt har varit öppet för alla, och vill ni liksom sponsra oss, tacka oss för det vi gör, så finns det en liten prenumerationstjänst du kan nämna kort.
Ja, precis. Nej, men det är ju Spotify som har den, och den är relativt ny också. Så att där är det ju 29 kronor löpande kost då, och då har vi ju en idé om att vi ska prestera en del exklusivt material helt enkelt, alltså ge tillbaka såklart ytterligare för er som vill vara med och backa oss då, vilket vi tycker är fantastiskt. Och då har vi en idé om vi tänker köra lite analyser, prata lite olika saker, lite tips och tricks på den
kanske
delen.
Någon fastighetskalkyl man räknar på någon fastighet, och typ hur vi skulle tänka kring den och lite sådär. Kan du ha specifika frågor?
Precis, och det kommer ju komma mer upplägg där, och just nu så finns det ett avsnitt sen tidigare, men vi kommer lägga upp mindre grejer till er då, som ni kan ta del av helt enkelt.
Ja, men kul ny funktion. Jag tror vi kommer ha ett segment i varje avsnitt där man får lite exklusivt då, om man är prenumerant då.
Ja, precis. Men med det sagt då, så tänker jag så att, och ni vet ju själva hur det ser ut, men vi vill ju nå ut till så många människor som möjligt, så vi är ju jättetacksamma för att ni delar och taggar oss och sprider det till nära och kära helt enkelt.
Superbra Christian, vi köttar på och ni hittar oss på Instagram på ekonomiguren, hacka ditt liv och Cashflowpodden. Vi hörs.
Ja, precis. Ha det så allihopa. Ciao, ciao.